But at this point in time, India is not considered wealthy enough to be ranked among the great powers. India is much more powerful relative to China than Ukraine is relative to Russia. The two principal ingredients of power are population size and wealth. During the Cold War, China was not viewed as a great power. Remember, during the Cold War, we had two great powers in the system, the United States and the Soviet Union. It was a bipolar world. China was not a great power. It was viewed as a major power. The reason that China was not viewed as a great power was because it didn't have enough wealth. It certainly had population size, but it was not a rich country. To be a great power, you have to have a lot of people and you have to be rich. And China didn't have the wealth to qualify as a great power. In other words, it didn't have the wealth to build the military power that's necessary to rank among the great powers. But what happened, starting in the early 1990s, is that the Chinese economy began to grow by leaps and bounds. India is an aspiring great power in my lexicon. It certainly has the population size. It's now the largest country in the world, population-wise. But what India does not have is the requisite wealth. India is growing economically more powerful with time, and it could eventually become a great power. There's no question about it. But at this point in time, India is not considered wealthy enough to be ranked among the great powers. That India should be very careful in dealing with China. There's no question about that. If you're Taiwan, you should be very careful in your dealings with China. There's no question about that. Indeed, I would argue the United States should be very careful in its dealings with China. You don't want to provoke the Chinese unnecessarily any more than you want to provoke the United States or Russia unnecessarily. But that certainly does not mean that India should do whatever China wants. India is much more powerful relative to China than Ukraine is relative to Russia. India is in a much better position to stand up to China. But at the same time, the Indians, I believe, want to be very careful in how they deal with China, because China is a powerful country, and it's in India's interest to avoid a war with China, in my opinion.